Hi there, welcome back. Welcome everybody, Connor here, and today I wanted to talk about 10 mistakes that you're likely still making or maybe did not know that you're making in WutheringWaves, and why they're pretty helpful and you want to avoid them. Avoiding these mistakes is helpful because sometimes they're annoying when you're trying to get through your dailies, or sometimes they might also prevent you from progressing further in the story or with your account's progression. Either way, in this video, I'm going to be covering each and every single one and what you can do to prevent it, or how to bypass it and how to avoid it. Let's get into it. Now, the first tip we're going to be talking about is not really a tip, it's basically a 0.5, but it's about the Wuthering Exploration event. You have plenty of good reasons to actually do this event, including the 30 gold premium tombs, which are really helpful, and that will also come alongside premium tuners, some astrite, and a selectable elite echo, which is very helpful, because this will prevent you from needing to farm out things like the Void Thunder Flautist, or even a 3-cost Havoc echo that has Havoc damage on it as well. Now, if you don't see what's on screen right now with the survey tasks, you have to physically log out of the game and log back in, and that was reported to be one of the major fixes or the ways to get this Central Plains exploration control panel that you're seeing right now, which is not very difficult. All you have to do is do things like defeat enemies or obtain meat, which is very straightforward, but it's not that big a deal. Just get to it. This is just a PSA in case if you didn't know. And now on to the synthesizer, which I've already made a short about talking about how valuable it is, because you have things like the arrow petrol, which you can use to increase your damage, especially if you're going to be fighting some of the holograms out in the overworld. But something I failed to touch on, and I fully take responsibility for not pointing this out in my short, is that the amount of EXP that you get is actually based on this little proficiency bar right here. If you aren't aware of this, the only way for you to get EXP, which you can then use to level up your synthesis level and obtain rewards like astrites or new recipes, is specifically by maxing out the proficiency on some of these potential crafts or items that do have value in the overworld but cannot be used in the Tower of Adversity, unfortunately. That being said, if you are trying to clear the holograms or you do want the recipes, great value, lots of fun. But whoa, Buster, because we also have to talk about cooking, which is also really important as well. As you take a look at the chef's level, there are a similar number of rewards that you get. You get Resonator EXP, you get new recipes, you get astrites, you get the whole 9 yards. And if you aren't already aware of the value of doing cooking, look no further than the crit food that you see on screen right now. It increases your total crit rate by 28% and it lasts for 30 minutes. And in case you were wondering, that's basically a full 4-cost echo on your character for free. If you want to unlock additional chef levels, all you have to do is improve the proficiency on certain dishes. The catch this time around though is that unlike with the synthesis, you do actually have to buy some of these materials specifically from the grocer. Just keep in mind that if you are trying to upgrade cooking, it does usually cost a lot of credits, and as we all know right now, as you start to upgrade more characters or weapons, the total credits that you end up having actually isn't that much, and you do end up needing things like stimuluses or events to keep your total income high. Now let's talk about the battle pass and specifically the weapon on screen, Autumn Trace. Now, there are probably a decent amount of you that haven't bought the battle pass, but in case if you did or you specifically decided to purchase the premium version, you'll notice that of course there are a bunch of rewards, but in addition to this, you get a 4-star weapon, one of them being Autumn Trace and also being quite good. Now, while this was all fine and dandy, something that you might not have caught, and I myself didn't catch it as well because they don't really address it or say it at all, is that alongside the 4-star weapon, you also get this Gilded Ginkgo, which can be used to actually imprint or give an additional rank to your battle pass weapon as well for free. Free considering you bought the battle pass, of course. Now, you could argue that this difference is not super big, but it is worth noting that specifically on Calcharo, there have been calculations done that if you end up getting something like an S5 Autumn Trace, you're only a couple % away from being as efficient as a Verdant Summit. Now, of course, that is with the disclaimer that you would need to get several additional battle passes to beat out a singular copy of a Verdant Summit, but it's something worth mentioning or looking into, especially with how good the battle passes are. And this is just a PSA, make sure to use the extra copy if you haven't already used it now. Now, if we talk about something more combat focused, there are actually a lot of people who believe that this phase is only avoidable if you run far away, or if you end up having to use your grappling hook, but actually you could just jump above, completely avoid this wind phase entirely, and although you could dodge or parry it, sometimes it's not about doing more damage, it's about not dying, avoiding this really annoying one-shot phase, dropping back down on the ground, and then one-shotting the monkey after he's exhausted himself. And fun fact, as you saw at the very end right there, I was actually rewarded with an echo for clearing and beating this hologram, which is sometimes pretty nice, and if you could end up clearing the hologram quite quickly, then who knows, maybe sometime in the future when we're 90 and we can one-shot these things, it might end up being a semi-decent or viable way to farm out echoes. Now the next thing I'm going to talk about is probably something that you have all experienced. Let's say you're walking through an area and then suddenly, out of the corner of your eye, you see at the very top right there, what's that? That's right, that's a challenge that you probably haven't done, and you want to do it because you're a completionist, you want to get additional EXP, whatever the case. However, upon climbing up to this part of the tower, you think to yourself, have I already done this? And the answer is yes. You're not going crazy, you're not insane. There are actually a lot of challenges around the map that for whatever reason just don't go away, even if or after you've directly completed it. And although I do get that sometimes it can be nice to compete in races or PvE non-specific PvP or combat related activities, and it's kind of annoying if you don't know if this is a challenge that you've done and you've gotten the rewards for, or if it's one that's completely brand new and you haven't touched it yet. So introducing something that is very convenient, very smart, and something I didn't realize to do because I thought the challenges were going to go away, and that's, you guessed it, placing a custom marker on every single location or any specific challenge that I've already done, whether that's a rooftop course or even one of the challenges where you become a bird. Whatever the case is, just mark them on your map. I promise you it will be way, way, way better, especially if you are not at the point yet where you know that you've discovered everything on the map. It'll save you the headache. Make sure to do this so that you don't end up losing your mind later. Now, on the topic of exploration, challenges, just things in the world that you need to do to gain rewards, let's talk about puzzles. And now specifically when it comes to puzzles, there may be moments where you're in something that looks like a point of interest, and maybe you don't know where some of the rewards are, you don't know where the bloat flies are, where are the battery packs, what are you even supposed to do? We've all been in this position, and something that I learned more recently is that if you're ever stuck, is that you can actually use the sensor tool that you're given very early on. And as you can see, there are basically references, or there are points of interest or activities around you in the area that you can discover and kind of use to guide your puzzle experience. In this case, I was notified that there are actually lines that connect between these battery packs, and essentially they were on the floor prior, but ideally what I needed to do was pick up the battery packs that were respectively on the ground and throw them into these slots so that I could power this lighthouse. But on the topic of the lighthouse, something that you may be aware of is that they do provide some rewards by themselves. The way that these lighthouses typically work is you find them throughout the map, and after you power them with the battery packs, you do somewhat of a hack puzzle, and then there's usually a chest or a reward somewhere that you claim or you try to find the coordinates of, and they give you a small chest. But actually, once you've gotten all of the lighthouses around the map, and I'll leave the description for a WutheringWaves wiki so you can take a look at exactly where all they are, you are rewarded with a gold casket that I've already completed a couple days ago, but it will literally appear on top of where I'm standing right now, which is of course really good. But even more interesting than that is that if you are someone that's been trying to clear out the exploration for Jinzhou, this chest, which stems from having completed lighthouse activities all across the map, actually contribute towards Jinzhou's supply chest exploration. And so if you're missing some of your exploration for specifically Jinzhou, make sure you do this activity, because that's actually what I was missing as the final supply chest activity, and no amount of loot mapping all around a Jinzhou was going to save me from that. But before we get away from exploration rewards, let's talk about the Sonan's casket. Now the rewards are well known and documented, they are of course quite good, but what you might also not know about Jinzhou and kind of its hidden exploration and secrets is that hidden at the very top of that tower that you see in the distance right now is actually a Sonan's casket. Now, while you might think to yourself, well, I can just climb it, it's not climbable by any means. And so if you do want to get the Sonan's casket, here's what you need to do. First and foremost, you're going to want to teleport to the Grand Library, but you'll want to scale this building so that you can get decent height and actually begin flying over with your glider. However you choose to get to the top of this building, whether that's climbing the mountain right above us, or if you just end up climbing on the building itself, point is that you have to jump off the top of this roof and start flying. Keep in mind that it does look a little bit sketchy and a little bit scary at first, but never fear, because there's actually a grappling point as you get closer and closer to this area, and bada bing, bada boom, You grapple to the very top of the tower and, well, there's nothing for me to get here now. And that is going to be one of the easy Sonen's caskets that you can get, especially if you're early on in the game and you have the Grand Library unlocked already. Now, this next section, unfortunately, is going to be a bit complex, but every day you do get things like dailies, and that's totally fine. But there are actually many quests, pretty much not even possible for me to list in this video without going in depth about, that are worth searching out and discovering whenever you have the chance. And they give you pretty solid rewards as well. It is worth looking up through either interactive map sites or wikis to find out exactly where these quests are, or if you really want me to, I can maybe make a video on this. Feel free to let me know in the comment section. I implore you to search out these additional side quests, not only because, again, sometimes you get things like Union EXP, but just because there are a variety of rewards that you can obtain, and sometimes they are time limited and in a chain, so getting on top of it early, now as opposed to later, will greatly benefit your total rewards. There is a high-level intimidating echo. Not only is very high level and will probably one-shot me, but they drop a guaranteed echo, which can be really nice, especially if you're early on in the game. Now, at this point, some of us are upwards of Union level 30, 40, but these echoes nonetheless are pretty solid. Number one, because in a lot of cases, especially as you get closer and closer to 70, 80, 90, etc., they're just a free echo that you can kill in one shot no matter what. But interestingly enough, our initial thoughts were that these echoes would only spawn one time. You kill it, they disappear, and suddenly there's nothing else to do with them. But after launch, we were surprised with the fact that they actually respawn after 4 days. Now again, having a 5-star echo is not super important depending on which echo you're getting it from. It is worth noting that for this specific mob, if you end up killing them, you get a cyan heron. This heron, of course, can have a variety of substats and things of this nature, but it is worth looking into if you can just get an arrow heron for free every 4 days. And this could help combat some of the issues that people are mentioning when they talk about how difficult it is to get 3-cost echoes. Side note, I made a short note about this for echoes, but in case you're using the Dreamless tech where you're trying to farm out more echoes or get Dreamless a lot easier by fighting the lowest level of him, you'll notice that there is now a notification or warning that says your current Soul 3 phase is significantly higher than the recommended level, but long story short, they're preventing you from getting an easy echo by fighting something super easy, which kind of makes sense, but kind of not, because you could just lower your world level and then you could instantly one-shot it anyways. Keep in mind that lowering your world rank level will put this process on a 12-hour cooldown, and you can't manipulate or affect the world for 12 hours after doing this. But guys, if you end up just doing the second level, it really isn't much worse either. I mean, seriously, just take a look at this. Bam, 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 bam. That took 5 seconds. In any case, the drop rate, the ability to kill, or the time to kill doesn't really change at all, especially if you aren't claiming the rewards from the weekly activity. But never fear, like I mentioned before, the OP farming strat is still viable and here. And now something I want to talk about is wave plates and how you could definitely be a bit better about organizing or planning out how your wave plates will be used. Now, if I had made this video just 1 day earlier, I would be recommending that you do the 2x event that was going on, so you got additional EXP, and you also make use of the 2x drop reward, but that's no longer in the game because of the 2 new events. However, what I do think is worth mentioning is that if you are trying to plan for what you're pre-farming for, whether that's materials, ascension materials, or new characters that are coming out, I did the math quickly, and assuming that you use 24 hours worth of energy every day, you don't miss or overcap on energy at all, you actually get 3,800 EXP per day. Now, side note, how important or relevant this will kind of depend on how willing you are to research and look into how much EXP you need before you level, etc. But as you can see by my level right now, assuming that I'm just using my free EXP, I would probably hit Union level 50 in about, I don't know, 12 or so days, assuming I don't refresh. But because I am, I'm going to calculate and try to figure out what I should be pre-farming and what is worthwhile, or what I can kind of afford to use my wayplates on right now. Given that Jin Si and Changli are about 2 weeks out, it is probably about time for me to start stocking up on things like Resonator EXP or even Weapon EXP for whatever weapon they end up having. And although right now we don't have any information on the characters, I am going to be a bit more cautious with how I use my wave plates, and I'm going to start stocking up on or finishing builds so I can start preparing for these 2 new characters in the future. And now, if you didn't see, I absolutely lost my mind trying to fight Tempest Mephis today on stream, which was very miserable, and I really am not a fan of this fight. But something very annoying and frustrating about the fight, outside of the actual combat itself, is that you do need to prepare for the fight even before getting into it. And I'm not talking about popping food, getting revives, etc. I'm talking about the fact that compared to something like the Tower of Adversity, where they give you your Resonance Liberation off cooldown the second that you get into the encounter, in holograms, you don't have this luxury and you're gonna need to build it up somehow anyway. Otherwise, your rotation and how much time you spend is going to be much worse while you're trying to get your Resonance Liberation and inevitably are just wasting time. To combat this, I did 3 things. Number 1, I put a waypoint directly behind me. And if you aren't familiar with the waypoints, they cost basically nothing to build. They're quite cheap, and you can make these additional waypoints from the synthesis table. But thank you to I Win to Lose, because he's the one that I discovered this from. But you can actually put a couple of waypoints strategically to farm out Concerto or Resonator EXP before you get into the fight. In this case, if you want to, you could just teleport to the Heron, who's kind of calm and doesn't do anything beforehand. They're basically just a punching bag. I can use this opportunity right now to fight this bird that literally has no chance of really killing me because they're so slow. And now once I've filled up my Resonance Liberation bar far enough, I can teleport back to the hologram, whichever I'm looking to fight. I have full Resonance Liberation, and I'm ready to fight the boss. Side note, if you're looking to set this up, it does help to have 3 waypoints, and while in this case I only teleported between the Heron and this location right here, it is worth noting that in some cases the Heron will end up dying quickly, especially if you're trying to charge up someone like Gion's Resonance Liberation as well. So I ended up also putting a waypoint at the Thundering Mephis, but ultimately you could put it at any boss that you want. They just need to be able to tank a few hits so that you can get Concerto or Resonance Energy from them. If you want an easier time fighting holograms and starting off the fight with more Resonance Liberation as opposed to needing to generate it from your initial hits and your weak warm-up phase, just do this process. It is a bit more work, admittedly, but you'll be happy to know that you can at least kind of feel similar to what you're experiencing in the Tower of Adversity with having your Resonance Liberation much earlier rather than later. For Tower of Adversity, you are inevitably at some point going to need several teams in order to clear the content. And although the topic of echoes and weapons is very hot and very trendy right now, keep in mind that when you're trying to build characters, although you will have used someone like Calcharo, and as you see on screen right now, I have virtually no more energy because I ended up clearing an entire side with him. If I wanted to, say, change his weapon to another character like Gion, now in this case, I was just using Gion to clear out more difficult content, but say if I wanted to swap my Gion's weapon onto my Calcharo so I could do more damage with Calcharo on the right side of the tower, I wouldn't be impeding or taking away from my Gion on the left side, since for whatever reason you can swap any echoes, any weapons, and keep the same level of progress and have literally 0 downside to it, as per what we're seeing right now in the Tower of Adversity. Now, the reason why this is important and why I'm bringing it up is because especially if you have characters that overlap, let's say you have someone like Havoc Rover and you want to share gear with Dan Jin, you can actually use the same Havoc gear on one character on the other, and you don't have to farm out 2 additional sets. That being said, I do acknowledge that Havoc Rover and Dan Jin both are very strong together, and therefore it would probably still end up in you needing 2 Havoc Rover sets. But it is worth noting that, especially for the future, you are able to switch out what gear you have regardless where you are. It doesn't really matter. You could swap out the weapons, you could swap out the echoes, and so long as one character can use it and another can, feel free to swap through it. You don't need 2 separate sets unless if you're using both of the characters at the exact same time, which eventually won't end up happening, and you'll eventually find use for this strategy. But the long story short of it is that keep this in mind when you're farming out for echoes, because if you're just looking at what's on screen, you may never need to farm out a 4th set of a generic DPS set ever again, because if they're sharing the same element and they don't need something goofy, you could just change off their gear and save your resources. And finally, for the last tip that I have for you guys, did you know that if you click subscribe and comment right now, you have better luck and better odds of getting your waifu, husbando, or ideal 5-star weapon on your next pull? Well, hold the applause. I'm glad that you now know. But all kidding aside, thank you again for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. If you learned something today or if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. Seriously, I cannot repeat it enough. Thanks for all the love that you guys have been showing me recently. I appreciate it a lot. I'll be coming out with a few more guides. I have to kind of figure out which one I want to deep dive into so I can fully understand. But thanks for your patience. Thanks again for all the love that you guys have been showing me. And I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night. Whoa, hey again. You should click on this video. YouTube thinks you'll like this video, and I think so too. You should click on it because, I mean, why else would you be at the end of this video, right? Just click on it. Just press the button now. Yep, 3, 2, 1. You're pressing the button. You clicked on the video. Goodbye.